Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, here with my review of the Silencerco Velos LBP 308 suppressor. For those of you that do not know, I'm primarily Patreon exclusive these days, so if you were on Patreon, you've already seen this video, and you also see 90% of the videos that will never be dropped on YouTube. I still occasionally, like this video, do release YouTube videos for you guys to check out. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, getting more videos and videos that you'll never see here, head on over patreon.com/Sage Dynamics and become a supporter. If not, no big deal, just keep checking them out here. And now let's get to our review. The 308 version of the new Velos line from Silencerco that you guys know, I did the review on the 556 and the 556K version. This is the full-size 308. And when it comes to 308 suppressors, I tend to be a little bit more nitpicky with overall performance. And the big selling point, and why you're seeing a lot of people go to reduced back pressure, low back pressure, flow through, whatever they're going to call it, is it's less gas to the shooter's face. And on 308s, gas to the shooter's face, for me, has always been a little bit more of a legitimate concern, depending on caliber. Shooting like a 7.62 by 39 or even 300 blackout supers, it's more noticeable depending on the gun and the barrel length relationship, and of course the suppressor being involved. I'm not so anal about it that I'm like, oh, there's gas. Because there's going to be gas. The gas has to go somewhere, right? But if you're going to claim that you're going to have less gas to the shooter's face, then you definitely have to deliver. And another thing that I get concerned with, especially for 30 caliber suppressors, is I tend to shoot more long range with 30 caliber suppressors, and getting gas in your face as you're trying to reset for your second follow-up shot, shooting 3, 4, 1,000 meters, is annoying. And it's not something that I want to have to deal with. So the 30 caliber cans tend to be more of a workhorse, especially for people who buy a suppressor to cover all calibers below. So a lot of guys, they won't buy a 5.56 suppressor. They'll buy a 30 cal so they can use it on their 30 cal stuff and their 5.56 stuff, and maybe some calibers in between. And that, usually there's a compromise there on the 5.56 side. There could be a functionality issue as well. For this review, I'm just looking at 30 cal stuff. So 7.62 by 39, 300 blackout, 308, obviously. Various barrel lengths, various purposes. And with the Velos 308, I'm expecting to see the same kind of performance that I got from the 5.56, the 5.56K, meaning that it does deliver what it says it's going to deliver, meaning less gas to the shooter's face, regardless of firearm operating type, if compared to a non-low back pressure suppressor. Being that this is a new, or I should say the new generation from Silencerco, you are getting 3D printed technology involved in the manufacture of this LBP, just like you are with the 5.56, being 3D printed Inconel 625 and a fully welded 17 stainless steel front and rear modules. Length is 6.4 inches, which is kind of what you'd expect for a full-size 308 suppressor, with a diameter of 1.73, which is comparable to the 5.56 offerings, weighing in at 16.5 ounces. So pretty light for what you're getting. Granted, that's getting a little bit nitpicky because some suppressors are only 2 or 3 more ounces plus or minus that weight for a 30 caliber can, but I'm comfortable with that weight range for what I'm going to be using the suppressor for. It's not going to be ungodly heavy even on longer guns, and on precision guns you're going to be laid in or tripoded on most of the time. It's not really going to be that big of a deal for maneuverability. As far as mounts go, it mounts to the Silencerco's Charlie ASR system. Back in the day, Saker mount, didn't care for it, saw a lot of problems with it with students in classes. The ASR is definitely an improvement on that. One thing I would have liked to have seen is more easy hub compatibility if I want to use a different muzzle device. I love hub, even though it is kind of a bit of a compromise because you're getting different tolerances from different manufacturers, but being able to take this off easily and immediately plug and play with the hub system would have been pretty awesome. Now, of course, there's a couple of things we're looking for right off the bat. Big thing being tone. That's going to be obviously some people's biggest concern because the suppressor is suppressing the sound of the gunshot, right? So for my review, I'm using it on various barrel lengths, 7.62 by 39, 911, and then 308s in your more common lengths, being 16 and 18 inches, but also on 12 and a half, because I think 12 and a half is a really good litmus test for a .30 caliber suppressor. It's not a common barrel length you see in 308, but it's one that I really enjoy because it gives me the ability to have a shorter 308. Yeah, I'm losing some velocity. I still have the same degree of accuracy, so I don't really care. And you know, sometimes people ask me like, why do you want a 12.5 inch 308? And I'm like, well, why do you want a 12.5 inch 5.56 when the round originally was optimized for 20 inch guns? Because I wanted a shorter gun, because it's more maneuverable, and sometimes guns are just fun to shoot. Throwing a suppressor, and 308s tend to be heavier, so throwing a suppressor on a 16-inch gun, weight's going to be a factor. Throwing it on a 12-inch gun, not really that big of a deal, and you're still keeping a shorter overall gun with still really good terminal ballistics compared to. With the Velos, running it, you know, really hard. It is full auto rated. That's something that is going to be a factor. I didn't do a lot of full auto during the review process, but I did run it really hard. And when I say really hard, because that's going to mean different things to different people, a range session for me during a suppressor review is usually 300 to 500 rounds each time I go to the range, either on one caliber or various calibers. So if I'm up there for 2 hours and I shoot 300 to 500 rounds of 308, that's really hard. That's a day of a class. Your general classes that you see people take, they'll shoot about 500 rounds a day for average. And I'm doing that in just a couple of hours. And even though I don't do the burn downs anymore, because the burn downs are pretty unrealistic, let's be honest, I'm still getting a lot of service out of the suppressor, and I'm still pushing it, getting it hot, letting it cool, getting it hot, letting it cool, to give a really good overall impression, a small section of what we consider as durability and potential performance over a longer period of time. Another thing, just kind of something that I focused on with the Velos series, not just 308, all of them, is the body design. They've got some I guess, features here, some grip texture, some raised surfaces that I imagine are there specifically for being able to get grip and tension for tightening and loosening the suppressor, but it also helps with mirage, I've noticed a little bit, for long range shooting through glass, because I started this review when it was still summer, and laying in behind a gun, going down range 100 yards or greater, after 10, 15 rounds, you start to get a little bit of mirage off the suppressor. In that case, you can either throw a suppressor cover on it, or in this case, I noticed that I was able to go 20, 25, maybe even 30 rounds before the mirage really became a problem with my vision. And I don't know if that's intentional to the design, but I definitely appreciated it. Using the suppressor for just general purpose, just kind of working into my regular practice, I shot quite a bit on 7.62x39 out of a SIG, the MCX 7.62x39 SBR, and it's gassy. It is gassier compared to other guns, but the 7.62x39 is gassier compared to other guns. What I do know, because generally that particular gun rides a Dead Air Sandman S, I'm getting less gas to the face, and this is just a mini comparison because you guys know I don't like to do comparisons, but it's worth mentioning. I'm definitely getting less gas to the face with the Velos than I do with my traditionally designed Sandman S. It's noticeable, and I didn't measure it, and I couldn't tell you how specific percentage or degrees, but I'm getting less squinty eyes, and I'm getting less gas in my mouth because of all the muzzle blast and all the gases I do not want in my face. 7.62x39, especially with your traditional steel case Russian or Russian-esque ammunition, is my least favorite taste out of all the gases I could get in my face. Overall tone of the suppressor of 7.62x39 was good. It's got a really good, a really subtle snap to it. Obviously, there's the subsonic crack if you're shooting subsonic, but it has a consistent, reliable tone that is like just a rapid compression. And that's kind of how I think about it, how I compare it. It's not something that you're not going to have to be overly concerned with. You could easily shoot the suppressor even on a 9-inch or an 11-inch 7.62x39. You could shoot it without ear protection, a reasonable rate, reasonable pace, because it does bring we're definitely below that pain threshold. Now, for a range session, throw your ear pro on. But if you're just going to be using it for hunting purposes, or you're just going to take a couple of shots here and there because you're zeroing, the ear pro for me wasn't as large of a concern. Although, if ear pro is available, you should always be wearing it anyway. Moving it over to 300 Blackout, I shot 300 Blackout supers and subs. On supers, the tone is very similar to the 7.62x39, which is kind of what I'd expect. Now, on 300 subs, this thing is quiet. Now, I'm shooting it out of a 9-inch, so your 300 black may vary, the rounds you choose may vary, but shooting 220 grain subsonics, a couple different brands, and tone was very consistent, and even for a high volume of fire, even as the can got really hot, that tone didn't change, and that's something that I really appreciate. And it kind of just reminds me of the performance that I got out of the 5.56 Velos, even though I wasn't able to shoot as many calibers through that. With the 308, I get to throw it on 30 cal and below, so that's always really cool. But there's usually, to me, I can tell a difference between the 300 Black Super and 762x39. The 300 Black tends to be a little bit spicier because it's generally a shorter barrel length, maybe a little bit hotter round, whatever. I didn't notice a difference between the two. On subsonics, the tone is a little bit of a giggle factor to it, depending on the length of the gun you're going to use it on. I was using it on a 9-inch. Not only did the recoil pulse soften out really well going from supers to subs, which is something that some suppressors don't do noticeably, I definitely appreciated the fact that there was a significant reduction in tone outside of the lack of a supersonic crack. The real workhorse for me when it comes to 30 cal suppressors is my 12.5-inch Sons of Liberty 308. It is a gun that I really, really enjoy shooting because it gives me the longer range accuracy that most people want for 308s or when they go to 308s, while maintaining a lighter and more maneuverable gun. So even throwing the suppressor on the end of it, I could still run that gun like I would run an 11, 12, or 13.7 pinned inch 5.56. It is a faster cradling, faster acquiring gun than what I'd get out of a 16 or an 18 or a 20 inch, which I probably wouldn't use for the same purposes anyway. And one of the reasons I wanted that 12.5 inch 308 is for that specific purpose, so I could run 30 cal and run it closer to how well I'd be able to maneuver and get follow-up shots on a 5.56. That being said, 308 generally has a more noticeable recoil pulse, and it can be more finicky with suppressors. So on some suppressors that I've put on that 12.5, the recoil pulse has changed my desirability of return and follow-up shots. It's lengthened it to a point where I'm like, this suppressor and this gun is not a good combination. Right now, this is the fastest return to point of aim suppressor I've put on that gun. So the recoil pulse is you can see the muzzle rise obviously on video, but from a shooter's perspective, I'm getting more of a straight rearward push, and my muzzle rise is just a little jitter. It's not a consistent rise. More of a factor, obviously, for shooting longer distances, and this is not a gun that I would necessarily bag in and try to shoot 1,000 yards with, although I've done it before, and it's fun to do because it's challenging. This is a 200-yard gun, and as far as running it hard, that's the gun that I probably I definitely did put the highest volume through consistently over the period of the 2,000-round review purpose. The next big factor with suppressors, of course, is muzzle signature, and one of the things that we've seen with some of these newer materials or some of these new approaches to baffles, or the idea of flow through, is increased muzzle signature, because the muzzle signature is a thing. Cold bore shot on this gun on a 12.5, the muzzle signature is there, but it's not controversial. It's not something you're probably hearing a lot of people talk about. I don't know for certain, because when I review something, I don't seek out other people's opinions before I review it, because I want to remain as objective as possible. So I don't want to read somebody else's stuff and then start looking for it in my stuff. I'll seek out technical data, but I'm not going to watch anybody else's review until after I finish my review. And generally, we all end up with the same opinion. Now, of course, for full disclosure on this, Silencerco did send me this suppressor, and I feel like, just for ethical purposes, I need to say that, and for legal purposes, I also need to say it. That being said, my integrity is worth more than a suppressor. There's going to be some people who disagree with that, like, oh, yeah, you're just saying this because you got it for free. Bro, if you're that cheap, I feel sorry for you, because you can only sell your integrity once, and if you're going to sell it for the cost of a suppressor, and the MSRP on this is just over $1,000, you were cheaply bought. That being said, I stand by my statement that this probably it's easily in my top 3 of lowest signature, and I'll tell you, and you guys may have seen this on other videos where that 12.5 308 popped up. That thing, even full-length suppressor, can be spicy because it's a 308 that we've taken a lot of barrel length off of. And the 308 cartridge doesn't really care for being shortened to a certain point. especially shooting 168s, 124s, whatever you're going to throw in there. And I shot a lot of arms core 124, but I also shot a 168 grain Hornady as well. And the muzzle signature for 12.5 cold bore shot, that's pretty impressive. Overall, the muzzle signature was very impressive. If I really got on the gas, I could get the occasional brief fireball, but it wasn't a significant enough fireball that I noticed it from my perspective. I saw it later when I was looking at the video. Now the caveat, of course, to the video is frame rates that I'm filming in are either 24 or 120. I may not catch the muzzle flash on film for you to be able to see it. So I film a lot of night stuff, and then I show you guys the video where you can see muzzle signature. And if you're thinking to yourself, like you're watching this, you're seeing the B-roll that I'm overlaying on my narration, and you're like, well, I'm not seeing much muzzle signature. Bro, that's the best I had. Out of all the footage I filmed at night, those were the clips where there was muzzle signature. And that's a little bit of a behind-the-scenes magic and frustration when it comes to trying to capture muzzle signature on video. You don't always catch it because it may happen between frames, which is really frustrating. Now, finally, return to zero. We want to make sure a suppressor is going to return to zero. So for return to zero purposes, for accuracy purposes, one, I want to see if the suppressor opens up the accuracy of the gun. Two, I want to see if taking it off the suppressor changes the point aim, point impact, which is going to. If you zero a gun suppressed and you take the suppressor off, your point aim, point impact is almost guaranteed to be different. I also want to see if there's a return to zero. So I'm going to do a 5-round group suppressed. 100 yards, 168 grain Hornady ELD match 308. So that was my zero group on a gun that tends to shoot just below an MOA. Now I'm taking the suppressor off and firing another 5 rounds, same gun, same round, Hornady 168 grain ELD match, 100 yards with the suppressor removed. And then finally, we reapply the suppressor. This is the next 5 rounds, so I'm 10 rounds into the gun, throwing the suppressor back on, put another 5 rounds through it. Same round, same gun, Hornady 168 grain ELD match, 100 yards to see if there's a return to zero after putting the suppressor back on. Pretty happy with that. Overall performance was fantastic. Running this thing on bolt gun, semi-auto DI, semi-auto piston, 300 black subs and super, 762x39. I got fantastic, consistent performance overall. I don't really have anything nitpicky to say about it. There are arguably maybe quieter cans out there in the same size profile, but you're getting and giving. I think this suppressor has one of the best muzzle signatures of the current generation of 3D printed reduced pressure suppressors that I have tried, and I've tried quite a few at this point. Also, for the price, you're getting a lot of great features and durability that Silencerco is known for. Also, they have pretty good warranty, pretty good customer service, so that's a huge factor as well. Another cool thing is your serializing is printed low on the suppressor where it should be. And this is a concern that some people have with 3D printed cans. If you have a bad baffle strike or end cap strike, end cap may be easily replaced. Those baffles aren't. So they're just gonna cut the top off, rebaffle it, weld it right back on. You're not, unless you get a strike all the way down here, which is probably not going to happen, an actual exit. And then I'm like, how did you put that suppressor on? You're not going to have to worry about having to lose your entire suppressor if that happens, because they put the serialized portion where it should be, and that's a cool factor and an important factor in making sure that doesn't happen. Overall, very happy with the suppressor. Easily one of my favorite suppressors that I've checked out recently. Something I'm definitely going to be putting in. It's going to find a home on a gun permanently. I can definitely feel that. And as a quick detach suppressor, I'm used to having my guns open up just a little bit because QD doesn't necessarily provide the same degree of accurizing harmonics that you get from direct thread. That seems to be less and less the case these days. And I was surprised with the ASR being able to provide that. ASR is a great mounting system, don't get me wrong, but I've never seen it tighten a gun up, all things considered, with previous generation of Silencerco cans. If anything, I'd put it on a gun and I'd get the same accuracy out of it. This one helped my 1 MOA-ish gun shoot just a little bit tighter consistently. And I definitely appreciate that. So overall, I'm a huge fan. Till next time, Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.